Hello, I'm Susan David. Pastor, let me ask you a question. Are you leaving the ministry? Where will you go now? You see, if statistics are correct, they tell me that as many as 1,500 pastors are leaving the ministry every month. Where are they going instead? If you're a pastor and you're listening to this, please help me out on this one question. If you are just changing your ministry niche, in other words, you're still walking out your calling, but you're just changing direction. God often turns our head in midstream in order to lead us where we're needed the most. Isn't that correct? But if you're leaving the ministry entirely, where will you go now to get away from your call? What direction, what city, what country can you possibly travel to that will cause the mandate that God placed on your shoulders to just fall off, just disappear? Unless you've totally missed it initially, you've got about as much chance as a snowball in hell to just walk away from God's call and never look back. There was a prophet by the name of Jonah, chosen by God, to go to the city of Nineveh and deliver an announcement to the entire city. Remember that? Now, when Jonah first heard this message, he was afraid and he ran. It was one of those hellfire and damnation messages that the Old Testament is famous for delivering. You know, get right, get clean, stop your sinning, or it's over for you type message. The kind of message that preachers used to be famous for many years ago. They were called scare them to death and they'll follow your instructions. Well, this type of message worked well in those days. We're in 2009 now, and you can tell the average citizen that if he or she continues to practice their present behavior, they will perish, and quite frankly, they don't care. Pastors today are up against a tremendous rebellious spirit. Knowing how to overcome that spirit and reach the heart of the individual takes some discernment, to say the least. But in the meantime, it can be very discouraging to preach your sermons week after week, and still the church attendance either stays the same or it decreases. You know what I mean? Well, if Jonah, who was called by God, carried a rebellious spirit, and if he ran from his duties, how can we judge the average church attendee who's dissatisfied with their present faith community, many admitting they're tired of church as usual? They're roaming. They're pursuing their faith and searching for answers. They're looking to fill the obvious void by hopping from one church environment to the next. Pastors are frustrated, not knowing exactly what people want. Well, as frustrating as it can be to stay in your call, walking out as Jonah did and searching for that rainbow or that peace of mind apart from God's intent is like delivering yourself to the fish's belly. Jonah departed and he boarded a ship. He climbed down into the dark hold of the ship to hide there from God. But it says, as the ship was sailing along, God flung a terrific wind over the sea, causing a great storm that threatened to send them to the bottom. Well, quite frankly, Jonah was actually sleeping through the storm while the other passengers, frightened to death, were desperately calling on their God for help. They tried throwing cargo overboard to lighten the ship, yet nothing seemed to help. And they began to cry for help. And when the captain found Jonah sleeping through the storm, he commanded him to get up and cry out to his God to see if his God would deliver them and have mercy and save them. Well, finally the crew decided to draw straws. They needed to determine which one had brought this evil on all of them. When Jonah drew the short one, they all asked him, "Why had you done this?" And he replied, "I'm running from God." He said, "Just throw me over. The sea will become calm again. I know this has come because of me," he said. Well, after the crew prayed to Jonah's God, they did throw him overboard at his own request. And when the sea immediately became calm, the men stood in awe, and they began to worship Jonah's God rather than their own idols. But rather than let Jonah sink, God prepared a great fish that swallowed him up. Now, for the next 3 days and nights, Jonah had a private party in which he called it the belly of hell. Jonah describes his thoughts. As he lay in the fish's belly, he said, the waters closed above me. The seaweed wrapped itself around my head. I went down to the bottom of the mountains. I was locked out of life and imprisoned in the land of death. That's in Jonah 2, 5 through 6. Almost sounds like waterboarding to me. He expressed that when he had lost all hope, he turned his thoughts once more to the Lord. He prayed and he confessed that those who worship false gods have turned their backs on all the mercies waiting for them from the true and living God. You know the story. Jonah was delivered from the fish that vomited him out upon dry land, and then guess what first words God spoke to him were? Go to Nineveh and tell them what I told you to before. Jonah obeyed, the people repented, turned from their sin, and God blessed the city rather than destroy them. Was Jonah happy about all the final outcome? He was not. He was angry. You see, some of us want our plan, not God's plan. We want a smooth walk, one with little controversy, many blessings and honor, just like we witnessed the big guru preachers have. All that media press, people gathering around thinking we're wonderful, large donations flooding in, secretaries at our beck and call, etc., etc. It's not that wonderful, friend. You don't see what goes on behind closed doors. You don't know the price many have paid. There are multitudes of great ministers and leaders who have died and gone to heaven only to find out that multitudes of unknowns are also there and have a greater inheritance in heaven than they do. We are not to judge these things. Your call is without repentance. Who knows the mind of the Lord? There are many Jonahs out there who have wandered away like Jonah, trying to find greener pasture, wishing they'd never left, but you don't hear about them. I remember numerous times in my life wanting to hang it up and just walk. The persecution and the trials became so heavy. You think it must be better somewhere else. I'm reminded often of my greatest mentor's words, Pastor Wanda Plunkett. When she saw my deepest trials, she said, Susan, you can come easy or you can come hard. It's your choice. But you will come. Pastor, God will never revoke the call that's on your life. So I suggest you stay with the program, his program, and finish the course. This illustration may seem harsh. I'm not into hellfire and damnation messages myself. Remember, this was Old Testament. We're living in this dispensation, the one of grace, New Testament times. Yet, whoever said it would be easy? But there's another answer for you, Pastor. Don't consider leaving the ministry. If you're burned out, look around. God's not left you comfortless. There are many avenues and programs. God has set in place something to reverse your discouragement and apathy, but your first step, you must return, realign your priorities, and allow God to show you where your greatest assets lie. Let Him develop them. And when it's time, He'll not waste one gift or talent that He's placed so carefully within you. Follow His lead. Receive the fullness of the inheritance that He has waiting for you. But whatever you do, please don't leave. We need you. We need you. Would you like to learn more about reversing pastor burnout? Receive my free ebook, The Perfect Church. Is it possible? And discover how to prevent and reverse pastor burnout. You can experience success. And also, I have a pastor's wives support group, so check it out. The URL is right on the screen. God bless.